Nobody is saying that intimacy is not pleasure. Of course it is. It has to be. Pleasure is what creates a life, that creates the baby. It's not the stuff, the gashmizdika stuff that makes a baby. It's the tainug, the pleasure. But what is the pleasure? Are you having pleasure from something, or are you having pleasure from him? Is the pleasure about something, or is it about him? It is pleasure, but choose your pleasure. There's pleasure from food. There's pleasure from shopping. There's pleasure from children. There's pleasure from things. There's pleasure from your body and his body. And then there's pleasure of him.
But that's my question. His body and her body, that's the biggest part of pleasure. Meaning, you need to put a thought into it, how to give her pleasure.
But here's
thinking about it at that time.
Yeah, but here's the difference. His body can be something besides him, or his body. See what I'm saying? It can be a body.
So there's nothing wrong with that. It's part of it.
Of course. But you want to get past it. You don't want it to be about a body. You want it to be about his body. And because it's his, that's why it's so pleasurable. But if he's not your pleasure, you're not connecting to him. The actual pleasure of just two bodies make you grow apart because it's not him. So yes, pleasure. The more you have of him, the more pleasure you get. Just from being with him. And in some way, that's a much greater pleasure. Look, you see, in the non-Jewish world, in the secular world, people have sex for a month, for 3 months, for a year, for 2 years, and then over. When you've had intimacy and you have to separate, it's torture. You feel like your neshama was ripped out. Like you were amputated. Which shows sex doesn't connect you. Thank you very much, it was fun. I'm going to do something else now. There's no bond. Intimacy bonds you. To lose him would be an amputation. And sometimes you have to amputate. Like when you have to get a get. But it feels like an amputation. Sex never feels like an amputation.
So you're saying that being together, that's what needs to be like your focus on your pleasure, not the climax or the after fact. Just being together, like that's what you need to put in your mind is that? That's what you're saying?
You're giving...
You're forgetting about that fact.
Yeah,
the ending fact.
Right. You're trying to...
Okay if it doesn't, I mean,
yes.
work kind of, and
yes.
either yes or no, but as long as you're together, that's, and enjoying that.
So if you want to use the example of food, you sit down and you have a good cholent. And next time you'll probably add a little more salt. But you had a good cholent? No, I have to have the salt. That's a chazer. You know what I mean? You want to get maximum pleasure? You're a glutton. It's good food. What is your problem? And you can't enjoy good food? No, it has to be overspiced. It has to be junk food. No, it doesn't.
How is that fair?
Yeah.
What?
Whatever, you should don't talk in these things, but I don't think that it's fair that one should always be satisfied and the other one, if she isn't satisfied, then that's okay?
First of all, who says it's fair? Men are men and women are women. You don't want to be jealous.
There are stuff you can do to get there.
Get where? And when will it end?
Be satisfied.
How much does it take to be satisfied? You look at the magazines. 25 new secrets, how to improve. 25? I've read every book on the subject already, and the other magazine gave me 50 secrets, and now that 25 more? Like there's no end to this? No, are you really getting the maximum? No, you got to try this and come on. Anyway,
All means to the same thing,
no.
ultimately.
The thing.
Whatever.
There are two answers to your question. Number one, make sure that your expectations are not what's causing the problem. Because if it's
I'm just saying I think it's,
if
from what I've spoken to people, like, I just think that that saying that it's okay, the man has to be satisfied, but the woman, oh, it's okay, she doesn't. I just don't think
no. Of course she's satisfied. The question is with what? With her husband or with her experience?
But by the man, it's the experience and not the wife.
How do you know? It's not true.
It sounds like.
If that were true, then why are men always looking for other women? They're always satisfied. Oh, they're not. A man is satisfied when he knows that he is a husband to his wife. If he's looking for some other satisfaction, he's not acting like a husband. He's just acting like a animal. It's the same thing. That's why you can't really compare. The husband has his frustrations, the wife has her frustrations, if you're focused on some kind of performance or achievement. If you really care about each other, you're never disappointed. You've had each other. There's nothing better. And that is, to do that, you have to undo all this mishigas that we've gotten into our heads.
What if it's important for him, for you to get there as much as it is for him to get there? So if you don't get there, it can make him upset and like, now it makes him feel like not capable, I guess.
All part of the same brainwashing. You're a good husband if you get your wife there. If you can't get her there, you're not a good husband. This is so mechanical. This is so impersonal.
It is physical though. It is the same way he gets there. A woman needs the same thing. It's a physical need. If a woman never gets there, it's a problem. It can be painful even.
But is it the
can be
problem
painful.
because she's so focused on getting there? Or
No,
is
no,
it
no,
problem
because it's not happening. It's just
she's
not
not.
happening.
She's not letting go.
If it's not
No,
happening,
I'm
it could
asking
be
the question. I'm asking the question. That's it. It's a simple question. Maybe if we let go in our minds, we'll get there without having to get there because it's a goal. A race between who gets there first.
There.
At least part of it needs to be there.
I know.
When it comes to pleasure, there really is no end. That's why junk food will never satisfy, because it's only for pleasure. Pleasure never ends. You can always have more pleasure. Just like you can always find a man more attractive than your husband. Better looking. And that's why you never get enough of junk food, because it's not even meant to satisfy a need. It's only meant to give pleasure. So when will you be satisfied?
When you eat too much and you have a stomachache. I mean, there's
You're not satisfied, you're sick. And then you can take a pill, by the way. They've invented a pill that can prevent your stomach from getting sick so that you can eat more of the junk food. A real need can be satisfied. Where there's no need, there can't be any satisfaction. Because what are you satisfying? So the real need is to bond with your husband. That is satisfying. How much pleasure? How much pleasure? There's no end.
I think when there's when it's very goal oriented, you lose the pleasure in between. And so sometimes
You-
there
you-
is a climax and sometimes there is not.
You lose the pleasure of him because you're thinking of the pleasure of climax.
Right.
So all of a sudden, he's not important. Well, that ruins everything. But it's the same for him. It's the same for him. If you're not his pleasure, then nothing is right. No matter how much he enjoys it, it's not right. He's not enjoying you.
Is it possible that someone hasn't reached that intimacy and therefore there are questions like, well, I still have to finish, I still have to get there? It's because they haven't felt what it's like to be in this intimacy aura that they're always questioning, well, it's not me, it's about him, because they haven't really experienced it. So the question is, how do you know if you've reached that intimacy?
There's no question when you're there.
Yeah.
So that intimacy, that aura, eliminates everything else that's like around it, you're saying? Like it doesn't matter. Yeah?
There is no more satisfying pleasure. There are greater pleasures. True. It is possible to have more pleasure with another man than your husband. That's why men commit adultery, because the other woman gives them more pleasure. But it's a different kind of pleasure. And to that pleasure, there's no end. The pleasure of being a husband to your wife and of being a wife to your husband, that's a real pleasure, and that brings real satisfaction to life, not just to a moment. So it depends on which pleasure are you reaching for. And they do compete with each other. It's like if you eat junk food, then you don't enjoy regular food anymore. Because it's not as dramatic. So we really are infected with this thinking because nobody ever had this conversation before they read all the magazines and heard all the advice columns and so on. If we got the right information first, it would be so much easier. So should you talk to your 6 and 8-year-old daughters? Yeah. Talk to them. Do them a big favor. So going back to your question, you have to have maximum pleasure from him, not from it. Because when you have that pleasure, your life is content. You are a content human being. Of course, you don't have the thrill of climbing Mount Everest. You know what a high you get from climbing Mount Everest? I don't know either, and I'm not interested. But I'm sure it's exhilarating. Nothing like it in the world. Fine, you climb them. I'm not interested. And by the way, you really want to have a maximum dramatic, exciting, explosive sexual experience? Try drugs. I am serious. There's nothing like it. And then when you're done with that, try a stronger drug. Come on. This is dangerous. Anyway, we should all have good news. We should all have wonderful marriages and wonderful children.